Well, here we are. We are on chapter 4, the Look of Manos. This is going to be part 1. It's a longer chapter, so I'll do it in 2 parts. We actually already did this one, and somehow it disappeared, and that's okay. I don't mind. Okay, chapter 4, the Look of Manos. Given the virtually non-existent budget allotted for the entire production of Manos, A Hands of Fate, all the creativity involving props, art, and costuming fell to my father. Hal Warren had a master plan in place when he cast Dad as the master, providing him not only with a fine actor, but with a talented artist who painted, sculpted, welded, and carved in a variety of media. And it didn't hurt that his star's wife was a gifted seamstress. Dad's artistic vision would make up most of the production values that you see on screen in Manos. On May 3rd, 1966, Dad signed a contract hiring Bill Jennings as his agent. He also signed an appearance contract with Norm Iris Film, along with a contract for Tom's daughter to appear. There was also an addendum that I can only imagine Hal pulled out at the very last minute and talked through fast. Clearly, Dad knew most of what was expected of him since he was probably already working on art and costumes to be ready for the film in another week. But he was not a man of spare time or means. He believed there would at least be a reimbursement for his out-of-pocket expenses. Hal reiterated that money was forthcoming through his various fundraising efforts and reminded Dad of his stock ownership in the movie. This addendum was merely a formality, so, heady with the energy of a new adventure and faced with the persuasion of a seasoned salesman, he signed. The addendum stated that Tom Naiman would agree to do and supply for no additional compensation. Set design, to design and assist in designing all sets required by producer, and to supply all props, therefore, except the set itself. 2. Art direction, to act as art director and to supply all props in connection therewith except sets. 3. Makeup, to supervise all makeup and to establish original makeup for Own and other characters. 4. Costumes, to design, make, and supply all special costumes, including all labor and materials, therefore. Hal was getting pretty smart in targeting my father, or Hal was pretty smart in targeting my father to be the Manos art director, since creating art was second nature to Dad. When he was home from work, Dad was either making changes to the house or working in his rock house studio in our backyard. I loved hanging out there, poking around every corner, inspecting the art supplies in the huge wooden box with a hinged lid where he stored all his stage makeup. I have very clear memories of that makeup box and the rest of the art supplies in the rock house. When I would lift the lid reverently to take stock of the magical supplies inside, a rush of intoxicating aromas would hit my nose. Spirit gum for gluing on facial hair, pancake makeup, grease pencils, cold cream. I remember how the different colors of hair for mustaches and eyebrows were coiled up in their own little compartments, waiting to be picked apart and formed into the proper shape for the characters. There was a big mirror on the wall that he used for self-portraits and to practice makeup techniques for upcoming roles. I had a morbid fascination with the welding equipment, especially the oxygen and fuel cylinders, which I always was warned away from for the danger of bumping one over and creating a disaster. Dad would say, if that falls and the cap comes on, it could become a missile and go right through the wall, taking you with it. But my curiosity outweighed fear, and I'd sidle up to it and softly touch the cold metal, imagining how this was possible. I only did this when Dad was concentrating on something else. Many of the props and artwork for Manos were born right there in his studio, and much of it had already been produced. The master's cauldron of fire with the projecting hand came from old Tabaccarota, which by that time was parked nearby in the yard as an ongoing source of welding materials. I was 5, and I remember the beautiful mild spring day when Dad created the hand and arm for the cauldron. I was playing around the yard, asking Dad 1,000 questions and generally getting underfoot while he worked. I waited outside the studio while he welded and cut the metal for the hand with his torch. Then he opened the door, dumped the hand into a 55-gallon metal drum of water he kept for that purpose, where it hissed and spit, letting off billowing clouds of white steam before being lifted from its bath. He set it down on a stand just outside the heavy wooden door of the rock house. "Don't touch that, it's hot," he said as he walked back inside. Well, of course I had to see if indeed that were true. After all, I'd seen him put it in the cold water, so how hot could it be? I stuck my thumb out to test it and came away screaming bloody murder. It was the worst blister of my life, and I can easily draw the memory to mind in a moment. Several of Dad's hand sculptures appeared in the film on the fireplace mantel, along with the bust of a man's head that Dad had carved from wood and then scorched with his welding torch. The hands on the mantel were sculpted from clay and bronzed. The one on the master's stone slab bed was carved from stone and fitted with an iron ring, which was how we attached Shanka to it to keep him on set and not chasing rabbits throughout the Southwest. Another significant prop in Manos lore and legend are Torgo's leg braces. In Hal's original script, the character of Torgo is described in one scene as being a satyr. Torgo has no clothes on, revealing his satyr body. However, later versions of the script have that scratched out, with Hal probably recognizing the cost of costuming that would be involved in the transformation. Dad doesn't remember any reference in the script to the satyr concept, and believes Hal's thinking was to make him physically deformed, like the traditional mad scientist sidekick and hunchbacks were old hat. There were no specification in the script, so Dad decided to go with the leg deformity. Torgo's legs came into being inside Dad's rock house studio again. Dad took fencing wire and bent it into tubular shapes. He cut and bent and soldered until he was satisfied with the look. He would stop occasionally and stuff the pieces into a pair of his old welder's coveralls to check the fit. After that, he lined them with dense upholstery foam, the type used in car seats in the 60s, for cushion and heft. And then he tried them on walking around the studio to test the feel and durability while I giggled in the background. I have a vague memory of John Reynolds coming to the house once to try them on and to get the rest of his costume worked out, all of which basically came from Dad's closet. The hat was Dad's desert scavenging hat. The jacket was an old one from the back of the closet. The coveralls were a pair he used when welding to protect himself from burns. Now Dad's a tall guy at 6'2", so the coveralls were huge on John, who was only about 5'5", but they needed to be big enough to accommodate the leg braces. The staff was a sturdy wooden post stained black, and the hand attached to the top was fashioned from one of the disassembled clothesline poles. Dad also made the hand prop that the master burns off of Torgo as he runs into the desert. He used wire that he bent and shaped into a skeletal hand and covered with upholstery foam, shaping and melting it onto the wire until it resembled a human hand with enough stiff wire coming out of it from the wrist to hold on to. The original plan was for Torgo to hold the prop hand from inside his sleeve and run off into the desert with his hand and arm on fire. But all that changed on the set when it was realized the lighting available would not capture the drama, and the danger to John would be too great. I was there in the Rock House studio again when Dad began the master's painting. Most of his painting in those days were done on hardboard. It was a more rigid material than canvas for the large size of his work, and the surface took quite well to the oil paints he used. Dad set up his easel to face the mirror for his self-portrait, and several times donned the master's robe to capture the drape and folds correctly. Dad had to be careful not to get any paint on the robe, and I was not allowed to play around during this period, but was very good at making myself invisible by blending in, quiet as a mouse, observant as a hawk. So I stayed and observed. He brought Shanka in too, and coerced him to sit still for a short time while sketching the dog's face. It was thrilling to see the painting take shape and knowing that Shanka would be immortalized alongside Dad. Mom was a very good seamstress and loved to sew, gladly working alongside Dad to design and construct the robe. He began with sketches and they decided how it should be done. The nature of the costume for the master and his cult of devoted attendants found some inspiration in Dad's former work as a young minister at TCU, Texas Christian University. Not coincidentally, there's something reminiscent of a minister and his flock, or perhaps a choir leader and his singers in the final effect. Even the yoke of the master's robe matches that of a man of the pulpit. After Mom bought 8 yards of black and 4 yards of red cotton broadcloth, my parents laid the black fabric out on the living room floor. The main memory I have of the robe construction was when the big red hands were laid out over the black background. It looked dramatic and beautiful, as nice a costume as Dad had ever worn for an acting role, in my young mind. Mom always let me help a little and took every sewing project as an opportunity to teach me something. There wasn't much I could do on this project, however, other than to run and get whatever was called for and stay out of the way. That's where I'm going to stop on this chapter. That's part 1. And you'll see part 2 is already up and running, so go for it.